and we actually called for this to stop and for the children to be taken to the institutions where children are supposed to be treated respectably and to be treated and to be given their rights.
Juvenile centers. Nadra, some of them, as you said, have been arrested and detained and have been subjected to abuse and torture while in detention. What can be done to prevent this happening?
I think there's already a lot that's being done for preventing that. One is to have good lawyers that can actually I mean, let's put it that way. There are children now that that are detained. There are children that have been detained since the 25th of January. UNICEF is working with the civil society to have lawyers to get them out using the child law to make sure that these children are getting that have gone out. Prevention is the best way, and this is where we go back and saying that we really need to work with the state, with key ministries like the Ministry of Social Affairs to reach these families and homes that expel these children, to actually call for the Ministry of Education to improve the education system and not get these children to drop out. There are a lot of children that are dropping out and leaving school. So prevention and getting these children not out in the street is the best preventive action we should do. What we're trying to do now is at least get these children out of detention centers as much as we can, even out of the juvenile detention centers, and being referred back to their homes.
You mentioned the child law, and of course Egypt is signatory to a number of international treaties to protect children. Critics say that the new constitution doesn't protect children's rights, nor does it speak out clearly against torture. It only refers to lesser forms of physical harm. Do you agree? And what provisions would you like to see in the new document?
I mean, the civil society and UNICEF worked very, very hard, and the government too, the National Council of Childhood and Motherhood, the National Council of Population, worked to have few articles for children's rights in the Constitution. We do have a couple which are quite good and actually talk about the situation of children, the rights of children in justice, that they should not be detained, I mean, except in certain circumstances, that they should not be actually detained with adults. So that some of these aspects are there. However, there are certain issues like the age of the child, which is internationally 18. We would all have liked that to be in the Constitution, because the child law talks about the age of the child until the age of 18. Not having that is endangering the rights that have been secured for those children until that age, and which we have in the child law, like the age of marriage, like the age of also protection until the age of 18. For example, the child law talks about the minimum age of responsibility, which is 12. So all these the securities we had in the child law could be actually in danger now with not having that in the Constitution. Also, the Constitution didn't talk about protection of children from abuse and violence, and that is important. We needed that in the Constitution. This was an important article that was also needed. So it definitely could have been improved, and the civil society, the government, the international organization have a big role to play to secure in this next period that the child law upholds.
But it's not just legislation that we need, it's people's attitudes that need to change. A lot of people describe these children as thugs and criminals, but of course they're victims of their own circumstances.
Absolutely. The issue of awareness and kind of like mobilization of the youth and the mobilization of the children themselves who are living in the street to talk about their plight is very important. This is a role we all have to improve on, better advocacy on violence, I mean, violence against children in Egypt is very high. I mean, around the research that's done, 80 to 90% of children are being hit as a means of discipline, and this is one way or another expels the children out of the home. The same in the school. It's kind of like a culture of upbringing that has to change, and it cannot change except with awareness and advocacy and changing the attitudes.
Would you say that the situation for girls on the street is worse than it is for the boys?
Absolutely, situation for the girls is much worse. They're much more vulnerable of they are as vulnerable as the boys in terms of rape, in terms of abuse, but however the mere issue that they get children is a huge risk for them and for the children, and is a determinant on their life.
A lot of them become mothers at a very early age.
Very early, at the age of 13, 14, and their lives are never the same after that. They also, of course, their children also risk being neglected by their mothers, not well taken care of in terms of nutrition and health. So, of course, the vulnerability of the girls is much higher.
And what role is civil society playing in helping protect these children?
There are a few very active NGOs in Cairo and Alexandria, especially where the children are, that are sheltering. They are reaching the through street workers. This is something that's been very important since the revolution, trying to get to these children, trying to get them out from the danger, and attracting them to reception centers, which are kind of like shelters but are daycare shelters. Then there are some permanent
These are funded by donations?
They're mostly funded by donations, and this is the issue. I mean, really, we're trying in UNICEF to talk with the government to see how can really NGOs be supported by the government more, and it doesn't be dependent just on international agencies. This is happening in some countries, like in South Africa, where the NGOs are agents to the government. If the government is not able to do that because of the different reasons, the mobility of the government, the bureaucratic way they're working. So there are shelters, there are temporary, there are permanent shelters, there are day shelters, but they're not enough.
And are these children getting an education, a basic education at least?
The education part is very hard. It's really very hard, because it means that the social workers need to be having that skill of educating the children, and the civil society has tried with the Ministry of Education, but the program is not fit for street children. It's more fit for working children, but not street children. The other problem the NGOs are having is rehabilitation back to at home. This has improved now. We're working with them on really making them work on rehabilitation and working with the families, but they can't do it all. And this is where we are now. UNICEF sees really that the Ministry of Social Affairs is a main factor of how to actually re-look at their programs to fit children in such circumstances, and that's something that we're trying to work hard on.
And to integrate them back into the mainstream. On this special day for children, Nadra, what message would you like to send through our channel?
I think the most important message I want to say is that children should not be subject to abuse and violence. They should not be subject to being ostracized or being part of this violence that's taking on now, unfortunately. Yeah.